trickle in. I'm gonna have to step out a little before 11 because I have to do a panel for MD1, but thank you guys for coming to the meeting today. I just wanted to start off with, so today is the day that UH has decided to make masks optional. So as of today, indoor masking is encouraged but optional. There is going to be an exception for clinical skills, standardized patients, SIMTIKI, and anatomy. And so, yes, Jason. So I've already noticed that some people are unmasked today in the building. But yeah, so we still will be making it required for our clinical skills activities. And, you know, I mean, PBL is and lecture, you know, the students are still really close together. So we are still going to be encouraging masking, but it is not required. Now, if Hawaii does go back, or if Honolulu does go back up to a high concern community, right now we're in the middle. But if we do go up to red, then indoor masking will become required again at the medical school. So we will be watching the CDC community levels. It's really hard though, you know, because those are based on, I mean, somewhat they estimate to about home tests and things like that, but you know, the majority of our cases probably are not being diagnosed in the labs. And so, you know, we have to take it with a grain of salt. So we also have, instead of surgical masks, we are requiring KN95s or higher in our SP and clinical skills activities. We have had several instances of both patients and students being positive. And so I think for those activities, we are still going to be asking for a higher level mask. And for our students that are isolating and then coming back to school, we are also asking them to wear a higher level mask for their second half of their, you know, their post-isolation 5 days. So that's been put into place. But as of today, don't scold people if they aren't wearing a mask indoors. Okay, any questions about that? About any COVID protocols or anything?
Are there going to be any? Oh, sorry.
Go ahead. Sure.
So there probably be students traveling Thanksgiving weekend and coming back for a Monday PBL. Are there any restrictions for them?
No, the only restrictions is if they have CSP, or, you know, like if they have their LCM at a Queens site. Queens is still the only one that requires testing when people go off island. Actually, and it's not neighbor island, it's only like to the continent. So if they do travel off-site, then if they are going to be going to any Queens facility, outpatient or inpatient, then they will have to do a post-test. Vance, did you have a question?
Yeah. So we still need to do eye protection with clinical skills, right? Because we haven't, I think we haven't been as strict, I think, when we've been in the, I'll be honest. I think like students forget their face shields or whatever, and we're just like continue on with our activity.
So technically, if everyone is wearing a KN95 or higher, right, eye protection is not as critical, right? It's mainly when, you know, the other person is not. I think we should still encourage it though, and in many clinical settings, that's still the practice, and so, you know, it's getting them used to having to do that anyway.
Okay. We'll just remind ourselves to remind them.
Yeah. And we do have extra face shields or goggles available if students don't have. So just let Nancy or Risa know, and we should be able to provide those for the students. Any other questions about COVID stuff?
Can you clarify eating in PBL?
Yeah, so because nobody needs to mask, eating is a free-for-all. And speaking of eating, if you are on campus today, don't forget that we are having the Susan G. Komen bake sale downstairs, so please eat up.
Sorry, I missed part of the meeting because I was giving a lecture.
No problem. We just talked about you the whole time, Dave. No, I'm just kidding.
I know.
No,
I
we
mean,
were,
about the COVID restrictions. So if we think that we want to have them wear a mask in tutorial, we can still ask them to do it.
no, you can't. You can wear a mask, but you can't ask other people to wear a mask.
All right, no more tutorials for me.
Well, so actually, that's a good question. I mean, when we're recruiting our tutors for these upcoming, so we will tell them that the expectation is that students will have the option. We can encourage it, but cannot require. And so, if the tutor then feels uncomfortable being in person without masks, then I guess two questions. One, can they opt to still tutor over Zoom? Or two, do we just say, unfortunately, then we can't have you tutor because we can't ask the students to mask?
So this is a big dilemma for us because, I mean, granted, yes, we need the tutors, but, you know, the students have made it very clear that they don't like it when their tutor is not, and they feel like, because it is really, so this was one of our things we're going to discuss, but, you know, they don't think it's fair. We're not giving students the option to Zoom in, right? And so they don't think it's fair that we're not giving students the option, but we are giving tutors the option. And it's like saying that we care more about the tutors than we do the students. Now, for some of the tutors, you know, it's not about safety though, right? It's about convenience. And the students don't necessarily like that either. They're like, well, why is it, you know, why should we make it more convenient for faculty than students? And, you know, they don't get it that faculty have jobs. You know, they're like, the student's job is to go to tutorial, right? And so like that is their job. And it's really hard to, so, you know, we are going to be having a town hall with both of the first and second years and, you know, trying to discuss this situation a little bit more that, you know, they can't always, I mean, I think I forget what meeting we were in, but we were discussing about, and I think Dennis had brought up about, you know, professional symmetry, right? But, you know, some things are not symmetrical when you're talking about faculty and students. And so I think that we have to, I mean, I think we have to hear out the students and we have to hear out their concerns and complaints. But then we also have to, you know, it's not a consensus decision, basically. And, but I did want to talk about that today, about, you know, about all of our in-person versus Zoom and all of that. I know we talk about it all the time, but, you know, it's still coming up. We came to a consensus for lectures that, you know, for MD6, you know, if it's online, if the presenter is on Zoom, then we are going to allow the students to Zoom in. And the AV team was willing to take up the extra burden of that. But, you know, now they're asking, well, what about PBL? Because some of us live far away. So if the tutor is on Zoom, like, why can't we Zoom in too? And, but we know that it's disruptive for the students when some students are on Zoom and so, I mean, if they're sick, that's one thing, right? I mean, you know, and that's what we're trying to accommodate. we're trying to tell them how, we're trying to teach them how to better set up the room for, and their computers and things, you know, for kind of hybrid PBL. But should we be allowing everybody to just decide on their own whether they're going to come in or not? I can tell you that Lee and the dean are very much against that. And, you know, UH's policy was to come back in person, and, you know, other students are not given an option whether to come back in person or to still log in via Zoom. I think being sick is different than, you know, out of convenience, coming in, you know, to school. So, but what are other people's thoughts?
Can you elaborate on what you mean by convenience on the faculty side?
On the faculty side? Well, that's what this, so the students are saying, like, well, if it's more convenient for some faculty to Zoom in, you know, because they have a busy clinical practice, and if they have to, like, so say they practice out at Polymomy, you know, they're just having to drive in, and they live out that side, right? And then they have to drive in right after clinic and then drive back out. That maybe it would be easier, like they would be more willing to tutor if they didn't have to come in person or something like that. And so, you know, if we were short on tutors, then maybe we would allow it, right? And the students are saying, well, what about me? Like I live in Eva, and it, you know, why should I have to drive in then and then drive back out?
How often is that happening on the tutor side?
I think it is not too common. But again, also, we're not really telling the students, right? Like why a tutor is opting to be on Zoom, right? We're not saying the reason. And so I think they're just assuming that for all of the tutors that are on Zoom, it's out of convenience.
So is it about us like just having a clearer message about like what resources we have and how we're utilizing them? Because like, you know, we keep talking, and I had this like personal aha moment in our last MD6 meeting that I shared with like many people at this point, is that at least for the MS2s right now, we're continuing to talk about moving back to normal, because we have years worth of normal pre-pandemic, but these students don't, so they don't even know what normal is when we're referring to normal. And I try to keep reminding myself of that every time I'm like really frustrated with them, that like they don't know how to be a medical student. Like, oh yeah, they don't know how to be a medical student because they've just went to online medical school for the first year. So how do I reconcile the discrepancy between what I expect a normal MS2 to do and then what these students are doing, and then be able to meet them where they're at? And so that's why I wonder if it's about perception versus reality, because the reality is we have the resources that we have. And, you know, we've told, you know, many of you folks why we made the decisions that we did in MD6, because we have excellent tutors like Dr. Ali Kata, who are more than happy to have the students come to Queens, but we just don't have the space for them at Queens right now. Do we, like Teresa said, do we say, oh, Dr. Ali Kata, not this year because the students, you know, should be going to you and they can't? We said, no, thank you for still being part of our tutor pool. Let's utilize technology to make sure that, you know, we can maximize the limited resources. And like you said, we never explained that to the students, but that was my understanding of the general in the discussions we made with our tutors. You know, because the students are expected to go to Shriners for their tutorial. They're expected to go to Queens for their tutorial. That's a given in normal, and these students don't understand that. So I do think, yes, there's a convenient part of it, right? Like we are all capable of making it to JABSOM, but the students are also all capable of making it to the hospital. And not that we say it in that way, but well, would you rather come to campus or would you rather find parking at Queens? Because that's the resources that we have. Because we are a community-based medical school, we do not have a dedicated medical center. These are things that are explained to you when you apply to the school, and I hope that you had understanding to what you are committing to. So that's why my question is more about, are we addressing the student perception of us, or are we trying to come up with like a unified, consistent plan for what we ask of our tutors? And of course there should be overlap, but very different strategies. And I personally, I feel you, Teresa, we would hate to lose the tutors that usually have the students come to them, and in normal times have the equipment and the room space and all of that. It also alleviates the room congestion at the Jabsum campus, which is why MD6 has always partnered with our tutors that way pre-pandemic. And so we decided, but it is, do the course directors get to make that decision? Should we have a unified approach to our recruitment of tutors? Not that anybody has to have answers to these questions, but that's sort of where we've been at in MD6.
I mean, I don't think it has to be, like a blanket unified approach. I mean, I do think that especially for the tutors, it has to be on a one-on-one basis, but I think there should be some general guidelines. I mean, if it was out of pure convenience, I think even for a tutor, I think we should expect them to come in, or to, but I think we need to make accommodations, for especially our clinical faculty that, are very busy and are, especially if they're far, or, it would be just really, they have a tight window, or, things like that. And I do agree with you. I think that part of it is making sure that the students understand that. And, hopefully like us having town halls with them will, where they can ask and we can explain. And maybe, for the next couple of years, well, it's because it's mainly the second year class, but, maybe with the second year class, we have to be very overt and we have to be, just explaining a lot to them. I think that, today didn't help, I'm gonna tell you, because, they are just, I mean, they understand that emergencies come up or things like that, but they were like, well, if this was a student emergency, you guys would still have wanted us to call somebody and let them know, and you're always telling us like you got to let us know. And did the lecturer call the course directors to tell them that he wasn't coming in? And I think if it wasn't a required lecture, like they wouldn't have been so pissed off, but it was required and it was at 7 a.m. right? And so like they were pretty pissed off.
Sorry, did they miss that? What happened?
So the lecture.
So we have a lecture that Dr. Harpstraight does that generally receives like really good feedback, but he is not typically available during our lecture time. And in the past, we actually had it as an evening lecture. So like after the students like activities, and then like Jane would buy the students dinner, and it was more of like an interactive session. And then in the pandemic, he's asked that the lecture would start a little bit earlier, like at 7:30, and they're all on Zoom, so it's like not an issue. And so this is a little bit of where the like misunderstanding happened between MD6, and that we had a lot of stuff set on Zoom. And so it was like, well, if we're going to keep it early and if it's going to be on Zoom, and then it's like, oh no, this is going to be a mandatory one, so we got to bring them all in at 7 a.m. And because there's no like, and granted, it wouldn't have mattered if there was a pre-clerkship person because the lecture started so early, but there's no pre-clerkship person that's kind of tracking the lecturers after I invite them into the schedule. That basically he emailed me as soon as he got to campus at 8 o'clock, and was like, I'm so sorry, it's totally my fault. My rounds ran way over because of patient care and I made it here late, and I totally understand that, you know, you dismissed the students. That was the appropriate thing to do. He totally owned it, and and that is
But
what
you know what was
happened.
bad, Taryn? Like, so I was standing right next to second, and I don't think he knew that it was second years that were standing right next to me when I told him that we dismissed the students, and he was visibly upset. He was visibly upset and he stormed off, and that made them even more upset because they were like, what did he expect? Like, we were going to sit there for an hour. And so I mean he might have been very apologetic to you, but he was not to us. I
And
knew who I was either, and so I don't think he knew I was faculty. And
I'm not making excuses for
no,
him
no,
by any
yeah.
means, but also too, I think that like we're all going through this transition process together. And I think that kind of goes back to my earlier questions about like, you know, we put so much time and effort into these lecture schedules, and we rely on these community folks, and it's optional. And if we want them to show up, we like make all of these modifications to essentially like push the students to show up. Is this really the best use of all of our time? If it's going to be so much work, and then the output of it is so minimal, or it becomes like so complicated because we just have a finite amount of resources that can't manage all of this.
Well,
Not
I
that there's
mean,
any good answer, but
if he really needed to present over Zoom, like, why can't we just record his lecture or something like that? Because I mean, or
no, he was happy to do whatever. It's just and again, that was our sort of interpretation of the everybody coming back in person, is that, you know, this has typically been a required thing. And again, normal was we would have it in the evening, and the students could also have it as like a social opportunity for each other as well. And we've made modifications that still were, you know, like not ideal, but fit over the pandemic. And it was just like just the timing of it was really hard to change. And I'm not saying that like keeping the lecture at that time and being mandatory is the right thing to do or needs to happen. And, you know, like personally, I think if it's like, if you can't make it at that time, then at this point, like me personally, totally frank, like if the lecturer can't make it, then we just don't have that lecture, because it's optional. Because why are we putting all of this time and effort and resources into this area when there are so many other needs? But again,
so
just my
sorry,
opinion.
I have to go, but I just want to say, so even though lectures are optional, though, I do want everybody to remember that the students are still held accountable for the information. And so that is something also that we need to talk to the lecturers about. And that, and then I think the whole issue of the lectures is something that we probably should explore a little bit more at course director retreat. But I'm so sorry, I gotta go. But Sherry, I'll keep recording on my computer.
Okay.
Okay.
So you're not gonna log off, right? Okay. She didn't tell me what other things she wanted to
But
discuss.
I wanted to just add to the conversation of I guess personally I was just curious as to why, if for PBL anyway, if the tutor can be on Zoom, and while having just finished MD1 in person and really loving the experience of being with my group in person, I also have had very effective PBLs on Zoom. And if the tutor is allowed to be on Zoom, and I guess why couldn't the whole group be on Zoom? And is giving some flexibility to have different options.
I'll just jump in and echo that I agree with Teresa, and I agree with what I think I heard Taryn saying earlier, that, you know, we've learned some good things through the pandemic, and we should probably keep the good stuff, right? So going back to the way it was doesn't mean that's necessarily the best. We should be better than we were before the pandemic if we learn the right lessons from things. So I think there are clearly some things that need to be in person. I I don't want dentists to have to teach the cardiac exam by Zoom. That's ridiculous. That didn't work. And we tried it because we had to, but it was not a good thing for us. But there are things, I think, like lectures and things that, I think it's fine. Now, it's funny, we had last year's first year class, which are now second year students, really want to have lectures back in person. They're clamoring for that. And when we did it, a lot of them did kind of come back and all that stuff. But now that we've had lectures for our first year students in person from the beginning of MD1, our turnout is dwindling, and it's never been like this pre-pandemic. All right. We usually have kept a good 80–90% of the students engaged in MD1 lectures all the way through, but they're opting to watch the recordings and things like that because it's a choice. I think we got to understand that things are changing.
Yeah, I have to say, having come into MD1 last Friday for a lecture, I was really surprised to walk into a room and not see it full.
Yeah, me
And I
too.
was also kind of disheartened because we spent weeks on our lecture, and then to come in and one, not to see a full class, but then two, because everyone's masked, I can't even tell what their reactions are and stuff. So it wasn't that rewarding per se as a lecturer to get. I think I actually would have had more feedback on Zoom, where people could put comments in the chat concurrently with the lecture. So yeah, I just wonder if, like Richard's saying, if there's just maybe there's a different way, not just a return to the old way, that might be better for everyone. And Grant, like, I watched Ola for community health, and I realized I hadn't watched it at about 10 o'clock at night. Being able to watch in 1.5 times speed is really helpful. So I'm sure students feel that way about our lectures as well.
Well, Sherry, looks like we need to talk about this at a course director retreat or a PEC
Mhm.
retreat or something like that. And
Yeah.
some good stuff.
I think it's always, I understand that students like the Zoom, but there are also students who really, really do not like Zoom and
Yeah.
really want to be in person. And when they're in a group that everyone else wants to be on Zoom, they feel very isolated. And then it's just more difficult. I mean, we've tried to do that with MD4 last year to like specifically ask them. But it's still difficult.
There's also the, I think, thinking about the trickle down effect. So if they're remote in the mornings on a Wednesday, Friday, and then clinical skills and learning community are like, hey, gotta mosey on off to campus in the afternoon. And then it's like, well, instead of maybe having 1 or 2 hours, we want to make it worth their while, right, to come to campus. And so I think that's what happened with that first year when they were telling us, wow, you guys just packed the schedule. It's like, well, because you were gone. I mean, we didn't tell them because you were gone, but it's like, yeah, if you're coming, making the effort to drive to campus and finding parking, then doesn't seem like an hour to do something would be worthwhile. And so we ended up extending the afternoon and using up the whole time, which also then makes the day go really long. So yeah,
Yeah, that's another, again, I agree with you totally, Vanessa. But again, as Teresa said, that's kind of trying to fit what we were trying to do back in the old model. Lectures in the morning, clinical skills, learning communities in the afternoon. Maybe we should just bring them in the morning for clinical skills and learning communities and just have the lectures zoomed or recorded or otherwise. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I'm not saying that's right. I'm not saying that's better, but I think we have to think about the different possibilities.
I agree, because I think that's where, MD6 this year has had a lot of trip ups in, like, okay, we had remote and tele, and we made modifications as we needed it. And then all of a sudden we're flipping back to just old. And that,
yeah.
like, and that just previous thing, just not having any sort of flexibility or new ideas and just trying to shift back to an entirely maybe now outdated model, I think is where we're having a lot of these difficulties with misunderstandings and poor coordination. And I definitely think that's impacting us.
I don't know about Sherry for MD2 and Jason, excuse me, for MD2, but for MD1, we did ask our speakers, if you really would like to Zoom in as a speaker for a lecture, we could arrange for that. And we were really kind of aiming at the clinical faculty that, are based at hospitals, not the Kakako-based faculty, which most of our speakers actually are. But nobody took us up on that. They wanted to come in, and we have a guest speaker this morning that was here. And but I think we got to have some options for speakers too. And last year we offered people the option to video record rather than do things by Zoom live. And some speakers said yes, and some speakers says they rather do it live. And I had one speaker say, I don't want to do either. I don't like doing things online, so I don't want to do this. That's fine. So
we told our speakers that the plan was to have lectures in person, but if they would like to be on Zoom, then we could make arrangements for that. So we only have a few. So like Bernadette will do live Zoom for anatomy. And then OSA has arranged for Helen to give a talk about finance. So that has to be Zoom. Because she's not on the island. I think those were the main ones. But then, yeah, I mean, I think trying to be flexible, and we will see. But I think most people like the idea of coming live or coming in person. But hopefully, they won't be disappointed like Teresa if they show up and there's not too many people. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, I did warn one of our speakers who wanted to be in person that everything after him for that morning is going to be Zoom.
Oof.
And he still wanted to be in person. So I said, well, just so you know that there might not be a great audience for you.
Well, I suspect the MD1 audience is about as big as it gets too.
Yeah.
That's been historically the way it is. But again, we don't know. It's a new generation. We don't know. But maybe Sherry will have, standing room only in her lectures. In MD2.
We'll bribe them wet snacks.
Well, yeah, you guys can bring food back. That would help, I guess. So we're still kind of bound by some of that in our classrooms right now. I personally like PBL on Zoom. I've really kind of become quite fond of that. And but I think the students like being in person. I think there's something to that. It's all that in conversation in between and just before and just after.
Yeah.
That's the fun part of things. But if there's a group of 5 or 6 students that wants to do Zoom only for MD2, I'd do it. I'd volunteer. So.
I think PBL, I don't know, I've subbed for quite a few groups in MD1. I feel like it flows better when it's in person, especially when they go like around the room. Like it's really like on Zoom, it's like, oh wait, was it my turn? And there's just a lot more delay in certain things.
More spontaneous in person for sure.
Yeah.
I think for PBL, you need a good facilitator to help with that, right? I mean, MD1, they're still trying to get their feet underneath them. But for something like MD7, which I do, they have to facilitate a role pretty well down pat by that point. So I think Zoom is smoother. But Sherry, I agree from the sense that I think being in person, you can use a whiteboard, you can facilitate discussions better. Now that food is coming back, that might be a nice, incentive to go back in person as well. But that being said, I have some experience I do a third-year clerkship lecture with pediatrics, and I ran it sort of in a PBL way, and it was in person before COVID. And when we went to Zoom, I thought to myself, this is not going to work because there's no way that the students are going to be engaged with it. And they adapted, and it sort of changed my mindset as to what could be done on Zoom. So I agree that I think there should be options. It's really hard to put a blanket rule for this. Depends on the size of the audience, the lecturer's comfort, the format of the lecture itself too. But I personally felt that early on PBL in person is more effective than Zoom.
So we can put this on our, if we have time, on our list for the course director retreat.
Is that set for the
Or
30th,
working
or
group.
did
So
we?
that was one of my announcements. So yeah, we'll have a curriculum committee working group on September 30. So that's going to be like our quarterly retreat. But
Is
yeah,
that's a course
September
director retreat or
30.
curriculum committee retreat?
It is both.
Both.
Oh, okay.
But it's a curriculum committee working group / course director retreat. Because the course directors are going to be working on certain things, but we're also going to have some of the clerkship directors also. And I know some of you have roles in both. So we're trying to, finalize the schedule. But September 30, 8 to 12, and I know some of you have lectures and might have to step out, but we have at least one course director from each course. So, and then we have a list of clerkship directors who are also going to be attending. So I will send out the agenda after this meeting for that. I haven't heard from Jill about things she wanted to discuss, but I did have some announcements. So the annual faculty report, just a reminder, is due September 30. The general guide and tutor handbook is out. So it is in the PEC and CEC drives. And then I'll work on the course director one next, but I'm kind of focusing on MD2 right now because it's going to be starting pretty soon. Brian, did you want to?
Sherry, thanks for doing all that, Sherry. That's a ton of work, but we appreciate it. Thank you.
And then I notified the students that the general guide is out, and this time I actually listed like what are changes from the previous years. I think that'll be helpful. And for those of you who are tutors and the course directors, that the beginning of the handbook also has like a list of changes from the previous year. Brian, did you want to do your little announcement?
Sure.
Sorry,
Sure,
not
thanks,
little
Sherry.
announcement, your announcement. I
Very
didn't mean
important.
to
No.
belittle it.
I just want to make a quick plug, as always, for MedEd Grand Rounds. As a reminder, at the retreat, we talked about how all faculty in OME every couple of years should be doing a MedEd Grand Rounds. You could partner up with someone. You don't have to be an expert in your subject. I'm happy to work with people and kind of, help you feel more prepared and get over the imposter syndrome, and also hopefully make it fun and not too burdensome of a process. So please reach out to me. Don't wait for me to reach out to you, but I'll resort to bugging people if I need to. And yeah, thanks. That's all.
I know on the evaluation form, the last question is suggestions for topics. Is it possible to, I don't know if anyone has anything under that, but if you can get a list from Corey Joe and circulate it, maybe, people can sign up for something they're interested in.
Oh, that's a really good idea. Yeah, I humbly have not had time to review the results yet, but that is a useful thing. Thank you.
And then I really enjoyed the last one we had. That was really good. So maybe it's an alternative to doing a grand rounds is finding someone, an outside speaker, to take your spot. If you know of good speakers and interesting topics, I think that's also a possibility.
Yeah, I'd definitely be grateful for the guests. I think we have to decide, and this is above me, but like for all of us as an OME culture, like is the little bit of nudging that we should all try to do them also good for our own professional development, and feeling like we can do something and be proud of it. But of course, I will definitely take the guests from a practical standpoint. So, but I think that's a question for y'all about how you want to think about that.
Sherry, I have a
Yeah.
announcement, or can I share something real quick?
Sure.
Okay, so I'm on the our Hawaii Interprofessional Education group with all the other health profession schools at UH. And so something new this year that we're doing is this houseless simulation. In the past, we've done a poverty simulation out in Nanakuli in person, and we brought some of our first year students. That was about 3 years ago now, but obviously because of the pandemic, they tried to switch it to an online sort of interaction. And so this will be the first year that we piloted it with some of the faculty earlier, and then this will be the first time that we'll do it with the different students. And so you can see, so this is the flyer. We have nursing, medicine, pharmacy, public health, and social work that are going to be meeting via Zoom, and they'll work on in groups to they go through a case, or they follow a single mom with children, and they try to see what kind of resources are available to her. And we do need some facilitators. There is, I have more information. There's some training, facilitator training that will take place also ahead of this, these 2 sessions. So the medical students will only be participating, and it's first year medical students. They will only be in the afternoon sessions. Half of the class will be on Wednesday, November 2nd, and half on Wednesday, November 9th. Our learning community mentors aren't able to do this because we're meeting with the other half of our students, either with a standardized patient during the time, so we're not able to help facilitate. So if anyone is interested, I'll forward the email with more information, and it has some the dates for the facilitator training as well. But it would be great if we could get a lot of our faculty to participate. They're looking for maybe 4 to 5 from medicine for each afternoon. And then all the other professions also will have their facilitators. So it'd be great to have some of us be there, and then get the feedback to see if this was a good experience, any suggestions for improvement. We don't know at what point we might be able to do the in-person one again. But this way they can accommodate way more students than we did as an in-person one. So I'll put this in the email as well, but I think I put it in the drive for faculty drive.
So this announcement, this is for the faculty recruitment. So it starts like a half an hour before it starts for the students, and a half an hour after it ends for the students. Is that right? Because in the ND2 calendar, it says 1:30 to 3:30.
Probably would be my guess, because they usually like us there way ahead of time, and then we try to do a quick immediate
A debrief, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's see. I have, everyone should have gotten the Save the Dave announcement for the general faculty and staff meeting. And they just told us you have to register for it. So I'm gonna drop that in the chat. And there'll be another, I guess, announcements with that registration, but they, at the executive committee this morning, they sent us the link, so you can register for that.
Sorry, Sherry, what is that event? I don't think I
It's a general faculty and staff meeting. Shoot, I don't have that. It is October. Let me look. See.
October
that's
11th.
okay. I think the form October 11th. Yeah.
Okay. 5:30, 5 o'clock.
Yeah, Tuesday, October 11, 5 to 6:30 via Zoom. But when it went out, it said Save the Dave.
And I'm hoping for a lot of help.
Okay. I think maybe at one of one of the things I believe they are gonna discuss is the dean's retirement. And so they discussed it a little at the executive meeting this morning about that there's like a interim nomination and process, and that has to be completed by October 17 to be on the agenda for the November Board of Regents meeting, because they approved the interim, and there's no December meeting. And then Jairus is going to start taking vacation from January, even though his official retirement date is going to be in March. So it's going to be a very truncated, expedited process, but they're hoping to do that internal nomination process with, the Jobs and Faculty Senate and HR. I believe they said like the staff and student group. And then once the interim dean is in place, and they will start the larger permanent dean search. And that also will involve community members, friends of the medical school, people who are external to Jobson but internal to UH. And I know the hope is that the new dean will be installed by the beginning of fall of next year for LCME purposes. So that's also a bit of an expedited process. They also announced internal giving. So this year's chairs are going to be Larry Burgess in his 10th year as an internal giving chair, as well as Olivier Lesseau. He is the chair of cell and molecular biology. We also worked in a lab together when he was a postdoc and I was a graduate student. So I've known him for quite a while. They will have Aaron will be coming to our next OME meeting to discuss the internal giving, but their goal is to have 415 people participate. Last year was 410, so they upped it by 5. The highest ever was 420. No WGEA dates yet. Sorry, we're like waiting for the double AMC to finish their contract with the hotel. And we've been going back and forth because the hotel also wants to have some other events and trying to see what they can fit in, because they're like getting the bookings now. So we're still waiting, and we're not supposed to share dates until the contract is set. So we've just kind of been on hold because we chose who we want in terms of hotel, because we got all the contracts, and then we made our decision over a month ago. And so they just were working on the contract. So I hope soon. It's been a really stressful. So we sent them our dates more than half a year ago. Like technically you're supposed to send dates 2 years in advance, but because of COVID, I think things has just been delayed. And there's this sort of protocol at the double AMC where they don't like to start the process until they hear tentative dates or choices from all regions. And not all regions submit early. So
Sherry, do you think we can expect a good amount of lead time for abstract submissions? I have some, because I think last year wasn't it like October or something for that, but can we expect a little bit more of a lead time for that this year?
Let me check. Where are my notes? Oh. I think the call for abstracts and reviewers, they want to send it out. It says this month. Oh, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Here we go. So we're working on the call for proposals, and they're trying to make it where there's, overlap. And that's also going to be a consideration because it is a joint meeting between resident group for educational affairs, student affairs, and OSR, which is Organization for Student Representatives. So things that are both GEA, GSA, that speaks better to, all audiences will be, I think last time they said they got like a little more points when they rank everything. The call for reviewers is typically October. And it's been low recently in terms of numbers, which means whoever volunteers has to review more. I think I did over 10 last year. So when we get the call, we'll try to disseminate that widely.
So you think the deadline for abstracts will be then late October or November?
I believe so. They're hoping to send out the call this month to announce it. I think the timeline is going to be similar to last year.
Okay, no, thank you.
Sorry, I don't have that much detail. And then the reviews will be due, I believe, December-ish. And then there'll be a meeting of the steering committee or a smaller group in January to sort of rank all of them. There will be preference to submissions from our region, because in the past we did have submissions from outside our region who wanted to come to Hawaii. But I think we should also maybe try to encourage our international colleagues, because last time we hosted, we did have, participants come from Japan and maybe Thailand. So, and then especially the group, I think from Thailand went for like 2 subsequent years to the GEA. So I'm not sure what their travel restrictions are, but that would be great. They are expecting, I think they're guessing about 350. It could be more. The hotel that we want has the capacity to, like, the rooms are bigger. So hopefully we'll be able to make accommodations for that. Okay. Oh, sorry. Any more questions about WGAA? And I don't have a text from Joe yet. Other things, we have a PBL tutor resource group, which is Damon Lee, Teresa, Dave, and me. Am I missing anybody? Is it just the 4 of us?
Maria.
And Maria.
Damon,
Oh, did I not mention Damon? So Teresa, Damon, David, me, Maria. So there's 5 of us. But if anyone is interested in joining our group, I think we made a call out last time, but I don't think, has anyone heard from anybody?
No, but actually, I think this is something we needed to talk about as a group because we wanted to clarify for folks kind of what the new process is for new tutors or new
Okay.
people who are interested in tutoring. Definitely, if anyone's interested in being in our group, would more than welcome everyone. But yeah, I think some course directors had questions about just like what the protocol is. In the past, the new potential tutors would come to school and have a 2-part series of get background about PBL and then have a second half day of a simulated PBL experience with students. What we found was that a lot of those tutors or potential tutors were being asked to come to this training as just a part of their expectation, new hire expectation, but not because they necessarily had any desire to do tutorial. And we weren't sure that it was a great use of resources to do this. So what we thought to do instead was when someone expresses interest, and Maria will send out an introductory video that Sherry put together and just some materials for them to review. If they're still interested and want to kind of move forward with the process, then they'll meet with one of us to talk about tutorials and get to know some of what are the options. And then, anybody, please correct me if I'm getting this wrong, but my understanding then was that we were going to have them shadow an actual PBL so they can just see what it's like to be in a PBL group. Ideally, it would be the PBL just prior to the one that they want to do, so it's close in proximity and it's kind of similar student level. And so one of our experienced tutors, like any of you in this Zoom room, would be a really great person to pair them with and just role model PBL, and then they could meet with the course director for the unit they're interested in and kind of make plans for how to get them involved. What do others think about that plan, or any concerns about this new model?
And of course, the goal after that is that they would be paired with an experienced co-tutor for their first time through. We do have one new tutor that we weren't able to get into shadow, but they will be with a co-tutor for MD2. So hopefully that will work out. And then we also have tutors like Dennis, who will be new and joining us at MD2, and Teresa will be with him for the first week. And then, see if he would like to continue to have somebody with him for a little longer, or if he is ready to fly solo at week 2.
Just to be devil's advocate and maybe to just make things a little logistically simpler, and having had a great shadowing experience with Damon Lee last year, is it redundant? Like, do you need a separate shadowing thing to schedule if the first time they're with their team member, they could just kind of shadow that person? Like, does it require this extra separate, what's the role of that? Is it so that they don't go totally rogue the first time they're with
No.
Yeah.
I think the role of that is for people who've never seen PBL to get to do it and then make sure that they want to participate, like make the commitment to a full tutorial session. So if you've had experience with PBL, I don't know that that's necessarily needed.
We're obviously a little different in MD1, not by choice, but just by design, that there are no units before ours for tutors to see. So we have tried to have folks that have some experience in other units or experiences in PBL as a student come in as our new tutors in MD1, but that's not always been possible. So we've had to forego any kind of demo, but we have been meeting with them. I've been meeting with them and just trying to give them some heads up on things. But can anyone think of a way that we could give a new MD1 tutor that kind of an opportunity. If we knew about them early enough, they could go watch MD7 or MD4, but sometimes we don't even know until towards the end because we rely on another organization, for example, to identify who those people are going to be.
I mean, I feel like if there is need to convene a group of students to do a practice PBL, that would be fine. It just in times past seemed like we were convening all these people, students and faculty, for people who I think pretty clearly didn't want to be a tutor.
Getting back to our earlier conversation, can we videotape somebody doing a tutor and maybe even have a little narrative over it or something, but they could watch it in triple speed or quadruple speed. They don't have to be there for the whole time.
We did that, and we thank you for bringing that up, because I think I was supposed to do some editing of Damon and Dave's group so people could see kind of a first year style and a triple jump style.
Excellent. So that would be helpful.
Yeah, we can get back to putting those together.
That's great. Thank you. Now that would definitely help us with kind of our timing issues. That would be great.
Yeah. So that's another function of our PBL tutor resource group is building this library of videos and resources for tutors. And we have a collection of different topics. We just haven't really gotten to making those videos yet.
Yeah, a suggestion that we had discussed was, like, as we develop some kind of advanced just meaning just beyond the basics, tutorial skills, we thought if we could make little bite-sized clips, maybe 3 to 5 minutes at most, that could potentially go out with some of these weekly previews that we send to tutors. It could be a way to do ongoing faculty development without having to figure out how we get everybody in the same room at the same time. It is, and we've talked a lot about different topics, but it is kind of feels a little monument, like a lot to take on, at least in my mind. So if there are areas of PBL that you feel passionate about, or you feel like you could role model, we would very much welcome any videos if you would like to submit them. And I think, to me, if we could envision kind of a curriculum that might span over the course of a unit, then we could send them out multiple times a year with different units so that we could catch tutors regardless of when they happen to tutor with us.
Okay, so if you want to join our PBL tutor resource group, I think, Teresa, are you our official chair, unofficial chair?
I don't think we have a chair. I do not need to be the chair. Maria is our chair.
Okay. If you're interested, you can send it to one of us, and we will try to meet more regularly.
Sherry?
Yes.
All right. I was wanting to share an experience because I learned from Dr. Horio by following some of his sessions, and then this semester I'm doing a PBL, and I find that the initial thing about I have the tutor version and the students version, and then it's easy to follow the medical, the to complain, HPI, everything. The only thing I was not quite sure about is how the students ended up, distributing the workload among themselves. It seems like they're more familiar with this than I was, because they already know how to assign. So am I supposed to just let them assign? I let them assign. I don't interfere. Sometimes one is a leader and it takes more, and then they rotate. So I think for me as a novice, I think the toughest part is like, Should I just let them assign, or should I just kind of try to help out? But then I learned just let them do it, because this is a time for them to get ownership of what they chose, and so they present better. Am I on the right track, Richard, about because this part about student delegating stuff among themselves, deciding topic is very, very interesting.
Yeah, the students usually sort out the learning issues. I think where you can provide input is if you feel like certain things go together, like certain topics, like some of the ones they'll intuitively know, like the disease and the drug, maybe they can go together if there's enough for everyone. But or in terms of weight, like if you feel one person, it seems like a lot,
Yeah, yeah.
that to help them kind of balance the workload.
I see. Thank you. That's interesting, because having them choose the topic of their liking I see them take ownership. However, sometimes some student would tend to do more like clinical, and some will be gravitating towards basic because of their experience.
Yeah.
So that's when we want to kind of even it out, right?
Yeah. I also keep track of like who does a DDX, who does more biological, clinical, populational, behavioral. And if I feel like they haven't done one of those, I just remind them that I'd like to see them do a variety of LIs over the course, because certain students do like gravitate towards certain ones. So,
Yes.
let each student have the opportunity to grow and stretch.
And it's funny because in David's class and in my class, there's always a funny one in the class, and there's like a serious one, and the others are in between. So it's kind of interesting. There's also one someone will stand up, be the funny person, and the others will be serious. It's very interesting. Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Henry. Oh, so one thing that I wanted to bring up was the pre-health advising center at UH. We had this discussion maybe less than a year ago, or maybe it's been a year. But they are looking for like more JAPSM faculty to help out. So Maria Chun in surgery has been doing this for quite a while, and I started doing it. I was the guinea pig for them because I let them know my availability. So I do twice a month on Wednesdays. And so they put that in their PAC calendar, and students can sign up for advising sessions. So it's like reviewing your CV, reading through a personal statement. The one I just did was a mock interview, but they were going to MMI type interview, so I had to look up how those are done. But so I was the guinea pig. They sign up, the students sign up, and then PAC emails me that a student has signed up for this time slot, because otherwise it goes through Star Balance, and that's something that I know Jason's very familiar with because a lot of people at UH Manoa use it, but we don't. So because we're not familiar with Star Balance, we may not think to check it. So instead, the PAC will email me that I have a student. They'll send me like the Zoom link and the password, and then I just sign in. Sometimes there's a miscommunication, but I get the student email. So like this past one, I think they were busy. They forgot to send me the password. So I just sent the student like my own Zoom link, and we were just like a few minutes behind. But I think the system works pretty well. They're looking for someone, they said once a month or, twice a month. That would be great for like 1 hour blocks to sign up. But as long as it's regular, and sometimes when something interferes, I just let them know, like, please, don't put this on the sign up calendar, and they've been fine. But when I asked last year, there were people who were interested, but we just wanted to start with myself and Pat to work out a system that might work for, the rest of the faculty. So if you are interested, if you're still interested, or if you are new to our meetings and are interested, please let me know. And then we'll work out something where we can meet with Kiana. She is in charge of PAC at UH Manoa. And so this is for the PAC is not just for UH Manoa students, it's anyone can use their services. So I also did I read through a personal statement from someone who actually goes to school from Hawaii, but goes to school on the East Coast. So let me know if you are interested in participating. Okay. Oh, and we only have 15 minutes left. Is there anything else people would like to bring up? No? Shall we end a little early? And if you're here, you can go downstairs and buy something at the bake sale.
No, we don't want to end early. That would set a bad precedence.
All right, Dave and I will stay on the call and we'll talk about the Save the Dave event.
Jerry, did something go out about, was there t-shirts for the team for the Coleman thing? Was there?
Oh, I did not see anything
there-
about t-shirts.
Okay.
Oh, like ordering t-shirts?
Yeah.
Oh.
Are there shirts? Are we doing shirts this year?
I think she said there would be shirts, but I haven't seen any orders either, forms either.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. Looks like in the past they've gone out sort of late-ish September. But I will remind Jill. And she also got the bake sale announcement out, went out late because she's been busy. All right. Coleman t-shirts. Auto corrected to women. Coleman t-shirts. And I was gonna ask her if there was any update on the ultrasound borrowing. But does anyone know if it's started yet? If the students know? I'll follow up with that too. All right. There is sorry, just one last announcement. You may see there is a temporary or casual hire for the learning community coordinator. Her name is.
Yes, I forgot to mention that.
Oh, no. Oh, you can do the
I
introduction.
thought
yeah.
about it a few minutes ago and then yeah, so Jill mentioned during our OME team meeting that there's some transitions for learning community. So as you know, if you're at the meeting, Corey Jo will be returning to her doing the international programs since things are opening up, and also helping with rural health and some faculty development. So we did bring on a casual hire whose name is also Jill Chung, but we're calling her Jilly to make the distinction between Jill and Jilly. And she is, she started this week. She's been amazing so far. She's sitting in Katie's old cubicle area. So if you walk by and you see a new person, that is Jilly. And she'll be working with us in learning community.
And we did finish our interviews this week for the pre-clerkship coordinator position. So we hope that person will also be joining soon.
Oh yeah, actually, speaking of hiring, so a job went out for the what did you guys say? The assessment, like director of assessment or something like that. Is that still? Because basically, I'm wondering if I have friends or colleagues from other institutions who are like really into assessment, it might be a good fit. Am I allowed to like say, hey, you should check out this job? Like, is that something I can?
Oh yeah,
publicize,
I mean, I
or
think
is it
it's an open, I think, yeah, advertisement. So yeah, definitely
And
can.
what would they
point
do? I guess,
people.
do I look up the UH job posting, try to find that, and then direct them to that? Or
I don't think it's posted yet.
Oh,
Okay.
okay,
And you can ask Maria because she's going to
Okay.
be the one who will take care of that. But when I talked to her yesterday, it sounds like she didn't have the job descriptions fully updated and those sorts of things to be able to post it. But if she knows that if you're interested or you have somebody in mind, then she can notify you so you can have a link to the posting, which would be really helpful.
mhm.
cool. Sounds good. Yeah, not me, for a friend.
But yeah. For
Yeah,
for
yeah.
you on behalf of whoever.
Right. Okay, cool. Thanks.
And I haven't heard anything from the OSA side about their recruitment, like where they are for the financial aid. And I think they still have Helen for a certain amount of time, even though she's not present. And then for the learning specialist as well. So I think that will be the learning specialist, I think is particular. Well, both are important, but I think for our students, not having a learning specialist is challenging. So the course directors and others will have to do a little bit more.
Sorry, did the job description for that learning specialist come out too, or they are working on it as well? Do you know?
I do not know.
Okay.
I think that Maria was waiting on all the job descriptions for the new positions.
Yeah. But that one is through
But that-
OSA, so
yeah.
not Maria.
Oh, sorry,
Yeah.
not that.
Yeah,
sorry,
yeah.
sorry.
Not the assessment, sorry.
And I think is it Work at UH where they advertise it? I believe so. Oh, maybe this is it. No, maybe not. I see a casual hire for a learning specialist from Native Hawaiian Health. That might be for Amy. Learner support. Maybe. So yeah, lots of positions open and hopefully will be filled soon. All right. Thank you. We're ending 9 minutes early.
Teresa, sorry, I'm just talking to Teresa for just a second. 12 o'clock was still okay? 12 o'clock? Okay, I'll see you then. Thanks.
That's good.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.